Nobody replies to generic value propositions. There's a moment almost every single founder goes through when trying to outbound for the first time. You build a list, you write what sounds like a perfectly reasonable message, and you send a campaign. But then, nothing happens. No replies, no conversations, just silence. Most people assume the list is wrong, the timing is bad, or outbound just doesn't work for their business. But very often, the real problem is much simpler than all of that. The value proposition is too generic to give a stranger a reason to bother replying. Hello everyone, my name is Lucas and welcome to AnyBiz.io's YouTube channel. Most founders don't actually have a bad product or a bad market. What they often have is a value proposition that sounds fine on a website, but completely fails in cold outreach because it just describes the company instead of creating relevance for the reader of the email. You've probably seen messages like, quote, "We help companies grow," or "We improve efficiency," or even "We automate sales." And none of these are wrong, but they are so broad that the person reading the email doesn't immediately understand why this message was sent to them. Specifically, cold outbound is interruption, not discovery. On a website, people are already looking for solutions, but in cold outreach, you appear in someone else's inbox without context. So the message has to create relevance immediately, or the conversation never really starts. And before we continue, I need to ask for a small outbound experiment from you. That's right, you got me right. This is the only cold outreach where I already know the recipient is interested. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. Conversion rate should be excellent here. So if generic value propositions don't work in cold outreach, well, there's a question. What actually does? The biggest mistake founders make is using the same value proposition everywhere. A website value proposition explains what your company does, but a cold outbound value proposition explains why a specific person should care right now. And those are completely different things. Cold outbound is not about explaining your company, it's about starting a conversation. And conversations start when something feels specific and relevant to the person reading the message. For example, saying "we help manufacturing companies improve operational efficiency" does sound professional, but generic. While saying "we help modular construction companies reduce installation time by pre-assembling electrical systems before delivery," immediately tells a very specific company why this conversation might matter to them. Can you spot the difference? I'm sure you can. One describes a company, the other creates relevance. And relevance is what creates replies. This is usually the moment when founders realize outbound doesn't fail because they are sending emails. Outbound fails because the message is too generic to even start a conversation. So the real challenge is not sending more emails or changing tools. The real challenge here is structuring outbound around a clear audience and a clear value proposition. And once you realize that, the next question becomes, how do you actually build outbound in a structured way instead of guessing every week? This is where most founders get stuck. Not because outbound is complicated, but because doing everything without structure quickly turns into random experiments with lists, messages, and tools. And after a few weeks, everything feels inconsistent and, even worse, unpredictable. What usually changes the situation is not sending more emails, but rather building a structure first. When you clearly define your ICP, clarify the value proposition for that same ICP, and run outbound in a consistent system, you finally start learning what messaging works and which segments respond, instead of just trying to guess every time you write a new campaign. And this is exactly the philosophy behind AnyBiz. Instead of starting with tools, or hiring someone and just hoping they figured outbound for you, this platform helps you structure outbound from the beginning, around your ICP, messaging, and multi-channel outreach that runs consistently, while you learn what actually resonates with your market. At such point, outbound stops feeling like random activity and starts feeling like a system that produces learning, consistency, and eventually, pipeline. Generic value propositions don't fail because they are wrong. They fail because strangers don't care about generic things. In cold outbound, people don't reply to companies. They reply to relevance. And relevance only appears when you know exactly who you're talking to and why the conversation matters to them. If this video just prevented a few generic code emails from being sent into the world tomorrow, then I think the algorithm deserves a like, a subscribe, and the bell as well. And if you want to see what structured outbound actually looks like, you'll find AnyBiz waiting for you in the description below. Thank you for watching so far, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.